Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Let's talk about all of the things that I read in February. So, a lot of the books that I read were in vlogs, so I'm going to briefly tell you about the book, my star rating, and what video you can find it in, if you're interested in more information on how I felt about them. First up, I read Young Mungo, and this is a literary fiction novel about a young boy growing up in Glasgow in the 1990s, discovering his identity and his role in masculinity and all of those things. I enjoyed it, but I didn't think it had quite the emotional depth that I wanted. I read Fevered Star, which is the second book in the Between Earth and Sky trilogy, I think. I also gave this 3 stars. I think it was very much a filler book, and I'm ready for the characters to start doing things themselves and not just letting things happen to them. Next up, we have Normal People, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I, again, didn't think this had the emotional impact that I wanted it to have. It is sort of a wrong place, wrong time literary fiction novel, love story about 2 people who are in different socioeconomic backgrounds, different family dynamics, etc., etc. It was fine. I read Luster, which I loved the writing style. I loved the chaotic storytelling, the chaotic narrative. It's about a woman in her 20s just kind of making messy decisions, and while I loved the writing and I found the point of view very interesting, it didn't have a lasting impact on me. Next up, I read Jackal. This is a horror book recently published. I believe it was published last year, that I gave 4 stars. It's really, really good. It's about a woman who goes back to her hometown for her best friend's wedding, and she finds out that her best friend's daughter has gone missing, and it uncovers this these buried secrets of all of these black girls in her town who have gone missing, and she starts investigating, including one girl that went missing when she was a teenager, or like a little girl, and some secrets that she has buried herself. Really good, really atmospheric, very, very tense. It is kind of slow, but it builds the apprehension very well. My one complaint was the inclusion of the more like magical realism elements. I enjoyed the elements itself, but I think the way that it was executed wasn't the best. But I think it's a fantastic horror novel, and it definitely needs more recognition. Like, I know it was a Goodreads Choice Awards nominee, but it has like shockingly few ratings, and I think if you enjoy like a very creeping horror, you'll really enjoy this. Next up, we have Killers of a Certain Age, which I also gave 4 stars. It is about a group of elderly women who go on a cruise for their retirement, and they're like trained assassins, and they're working for this thing called the Organization, I think is what they call it, or the museum. And it's basically like the CIA, but they don't really discuss the details of it. And while they're on this cruise, they discover a plot to try to kill them. And so they are trying to figure out what's going on. And then you're also getting flashbacks to different missions with the women in the group. I really, really enjoyed this. It's a fun mystery. It reminded me a lot of like Dial A for Aunties, Finley Donovan's Killing It. While they're a little bit more experienced in murder and death and things like that, the writing style, the whimsy, the like absurdness is very similar. And it was a lot of fun. I like reading from older characters. I don't think we get that point of view a lot. And I just enjoyed... It felt slow, but also it was amazing seeing these women in their 60s that are just badass, going around killing people with these really like amazing assassin plots and like using their smarts, but also talking about what led them to the situation. And it was just a lot of fun, a lot of traveling. They're on this cruise, and they go to Paris, they go to catacombs. Like, it was a lot of fun. and the audiobook experience was fantastic. So I really enjoyed it, and I think if it interests you at all, I would say pick it up, because it was just like a departure from other books like this, and it was a lot of fun. And then for the same video that I read Luster and Normal People, I read The Peer and the Puppet. This is a bully romance that I gave 4 stars. It's the first book in a series that I'm very excited to continue. In this first one, the heroine moves to the town that the hero lives in with his father after she has a run-in with a local gang, and she has to escape them because she's kind of gotten on their bad side. So her and her mom go to live with the hero and his father, and they have sort of an antagonistic relationship, and we find out some secrets in his life, and they get embroiled in the gang, and it's just like a fun bully-esque romance, very new adult, very dramatic. And then I also read for that video Culty, which I gave 3 stars. This is the second Mariana Zapata that I have tried to read, and I'm not the biggest fan. I don't like the way she characterizes her heroines, and she does like a lot of repetitive jokes that I don't appreciate, and also not a lot of character work with her heroes in particular. So while I think the progression of the relationship in this one to friendship, from like this coach-athlete relationship to friends to lovers, was nice, we didn't do enough work with the hero to make me believe that it was like this end-all be-all. Next up, I read The Awakening. This is the first book in the Zodiac Academy. I tried to read it previously. This second go round, I did end up giving it 3 stars. It was a lot of fun. I definitely think it's a book that you can read at the wrong place at the wrong time and not really enjoy, or vice versa. Pick it up at the right time when you just kind of want a silly, goofy, fun time, and you'll really enjoy it. If you're a stickler for like continuity and distinction in characters and character growth and like all of that in writing style, you will not enjoy this. But if you can go in knowing that it's just sort of fun, you will, I think, get something out of it. I also read Glint, which is the second book in the Plated Prisoner series. I gave this 4 stars. I think it was a fantastic continuation, and I enjoyed a lot of the character work that went into it. I do see some of the issues with the point of view changes and the slow pace of the plot, but I enjoyed, again, the character work that we got out of the second book. 4 stars. I read Prince of Sorrows. I decided not to rate this one, as I state in that video. It is an MM romance, and it reads like a fairy tale. It is between a human and a fae, and the writing is spectacular. The writing is very ethereal, very fairy tale-esque, but unfortunately I don't feel like the effort was put into the character or relationship growth. The reason I decided not to rate it is because it is an MM romance. It is a largely queer cast, and it's just a departure from the average fantasy romance, and I wouldn't want my star rating to dissuade anybody. It just wasn't necessarily everything that I was looking for. And then lastly for that video, I read The Bridge Kingdom, which I also gave 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one. I think it was a fantastic first book to a series. It is sort of an enemies to lovers about a woman who has to become the queen to a rival king, and there is not much known about this kingdom. So while she is trying to assassinate and learn secrets about the king and his kingdom, she is sort of getting more hints at the people and the story behind the kingdom and kind of the way that it works. And I really enjoyed it. I think it was a really strong start. I enjoyed the way that it concluded, and I'm excited to see what it means for the rest of the series. I then read some manga that I wasn't the biggest fan of. So I read Love Rush Volume 1 and I read Black Torch Volume 1. Love Rush is a like why choose about a guy like every girl is obsessed with, and then Black Torch is about a ninja. And while Black Torch had amazing art, neither of the stories really grabbed my attention, so I probably won't be continuing those. And if I had to give them star ratings, they would be like, Love Rush would be like a 2 and Black Torch would be like a 3. but they're not a series that I will be continuing. So then I started my reread of the Game of Thrones series. I'm actually buddy reading this series with some friends, and I was supposed to be reading the second one in February. We kind of all fell behind on that one. So I actually read the first one in February, and I had read this series previously. I had read the first 3 books. And I'm sure you are familiar with this series, but if you are not for some reason, it is essentially a high fantasy, grimdark-esque fantasy series, and it follows a large cast of characters, like very large, but there is a war going on in this country for the kingdom, essentially, who will rule. And this first one is sort of setting up your main characters who you're going to follow. I did decide to give this first one 4 stars. Full disclosure, I am about 50% through the second one, and it's probably going to get the same rating. I think that George R.R. Martin is an amazing author. I think his world building is very profound, very intricate, and well thought out, well structured. I think his character development is amazing, and his ability to weave together these different points of view that seemingly have no like connection to each other and slowly build this world together is amazing. But quite frankly, I'm really tired of reading male written fantasies where every single woman is assaulted, and that is sort of like her place or her storyline or her like the start of her character growth. I'm just a little bit tired of it, and I don't quite get it. Like, you are making a fantasy world. The gender norms, gender identities, the way that society views men and women, or whether they even acknowledge genders in any way, is like completely up to you. And I'm sort of tired of the typical, very misogynistic, patriarchal worlds. And I'm by no means like looking for something crazy out there, I guess, and I recognize that like this is an OG fantasy series, and there are really good parts, but I'm just personally tired of storylines like that. And I know that a lot of the characters that start out with these assault plot lines have amazing growth. I'm just tired of that being the catalyst. So, and then I also read Amari and the Great Game. This is the second book in the Paranormal Investigators series. The first book in this series being Amari and the Night Brothers. This is about a young girl, middle grade series about a young girl who is on the search for her missing brother. She discovers a suitcase in his closet that opens her eyes to this world of paranormal activity, paranormal creatures, magic, stuff like that. She gets to this summer camp of sorts, and she is revealed to be a magician. And they don't have the best reputation. There was a group of magicians like decades previously who had started a war that left a really bad impact on the world. And so she's kind of just trying to discover her powers, fit into this world, figure out where she fits in, make friends, and sort of like find out this mystery behind her brother as well. I gave the first book in the series 5 stars, and I decided to give this one 4 stars. I think it's a great continuation. There's much more exploration into like the classes she's taking, learning how to work her powers, more about the world and the Bureau and like herself and some different organizations and some history. It just wasn't as like fast-paced as the first one was, and with middle grade I tend to like very fast-paced stories, especially fantasy middle grade, which is like exclusively what I read. But I still think it's a fantastic sequel, and I'm very excited to see where the story goes. And I think this could be a long-spanning series that a lot of kids love and is very influential in their lives, and I'm excited to see that process. And then I wrapped up the month by reading some thrillers, I guess. I read Things We Do in the Dark, which is just a very stereotypical thriller, and I gave it 2 stars. This is about a woman who is so forgettable that I don't remember. So let me look up the plot. Okay. So this is about Paris, who in the beginning of the book wakes up and she's covered in blood and she's holding a knife, and her husband, her celebrity husband, is dead in the bathtub. And she gets accused of his murder, obviously, and she's in prison, and she has to find out what the truth is. And it unravels a lot of secrets about her husband, and there's also a similar murder that happened decades ago. I didn't really like this. I would say it's pretty readable, as most thrillers are in my opinion, but it didn't have anything, as you can see, very memorable, very like groundbreaking, earth-changing. The reveal was the most obvious thing I think I've ever read. As soon as the killer came on page, I was like, yeah, that's obvious, yeah. So I just, no. I might recommend it if it's like the first thriller you've ever read in your entire life. You've never watched a movie like this, you've never read a book like this, maybe. But other than that, no. The last thing that I read was The Woman in the Library. Going into this book, I was very unsure of the tone and what we were going for, and I'm still very unsure of the tone and what the author was going for, but basically, it is a book inside of a book. So there is a woman who is a writer, and she's at the library looking for inspiration, and there are these 3 other people at the library with her, and she befriends them, and the author uses them in her story. They hear a scream in the library, and there's no body found or anything like that, so they're allowed to leave, but you're sort of like following the friends as they find out what's happened. Some secrets are revealed about their friend group, but it's mostly just like about them being friends and like falling in love and stuff like that. And then you also, at the end of each chapter, are getting a letter from a guy to the author of the book that you're reading, if that makes sense. So you're reading a book about an author who's writing a book, and then you're reading letters to the author that book you're reading about the book. Does that make sense? And this person is like kind of creepy, and the story with them goes from there. So you kind of have 2 different mysteries going on at once. And I don't know, again, tonally what this was trying to do. I did give it 3 stars. I enjoyed it more than I did Things We Do in the Dark. I think the layering of the author being an author and writing about an author was interesting. And the mystery aspect was interesting, but I didn't care about them being friends. I didn't care about her being in love with one of the guys. And I think the heroine was unbelievably naive and dumb about people that she's just met for the sake of it. There's one character that they find a bunch of secrets out about, and it is suspected that this character might be the killer from the very beginning, and the entire time she's like, I don't believe it, I don't believe it, I don't believe it, I don't believe, like, doesn't want to believe anything, doesn't want to believe that this character might have done something, just because she has feelings for them, and it doesn't make much sense. It's like, I don't like when characters are unbelievably naive for the sake of furthering the plot, like for the sake of them investigating more or whatever. So I just don't quite know. Like, I don't know if this was supposed to be like a literary adventure, like the Dust Jacket says, where it's like just friendship, what you'll do for your friends, that sort of thing, or if it was like trying to be a mystery. And I can't say that the twist was like the most shocking. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. It wasn't bad. It was readable, but it wasn't quite my thing, I think. And that's not an unpopular opinion if you look at Goodreads. So those are all of the things that I read in February. This month was really focused on taking it slow, and I'm happy with the amount of books that I read. I'm happy with the different genres and ways that my reading went, the different types of books that I read. I would love to know down in the comments what you read in February, what your favorite book was, what book have you been obsessed with lately. I would love to know. If you are looking for more content from me, you can check out my Instagram or my podcast Instagram. You can also check out my podcast on all your favorite streaming platforms. It's a horror podcast. It's a lot of fun. We are on a hiatus right now, but we are hoping to come back soon. Don't forget to subscribe if you're looking for more content like this from me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next one.